Alright, so in today's video we're going to talk a little bit about motherboards. This is an example of an Intel 300 series motherboard. And this is an example of a AMD X570 motherboard that'll support Ryzen chips. So we'll talk a little bit about both of these in this video. Alright, so it's 2020. There are all kinds of motherboards out there for you to build either an 8th or 9th gen Intel computer or a Ryzen 3000 computer. X570 is probably the best ones, most expensive. There's also the 400 series, and not sure. I think 300 series works as well. Don't quote me on that. I'm not really a AMD guy, even though I do have a couple of them, and I'm starting to get more of that stuff in here for the channel because I realize they're become really popular. So in this video we're going to talk about some of the basics of motherboards and things you need to be aware of. So let's talk Intel first, and then some point we'll kind of talk about AMD. But there are different CPUs you can buy, of course, right? Now, I've grabbed a few boxes of some of the CPUs I have. I have quite a few of them. One of the benefits of having a channel like this. But so Intel, you're talking at the bottom. I don't have an example here, even though one of these computers around here has it in it. Celeron G49, G4920. Those are the most basic CPUs out there. There are some variations of it. Ones that end in T, which draw less wattage. And, in my opinion, not something most of you are going to buy to build your 2020 computer. So we're not really going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Now, basics of just looking at the processors, and I'll have another video on CPUs, but you've got to know what CPU you want to go with, okay? So one of the other videos I talk a lot about what the end state's going to be. What do you want to have? If you're going to buy something like this i9 9900KF, you need to know what that basically means, what you're getting yourself into, what these letters mean at the end. So let's start with the i3, okay? i3 9100 has no letters after it. This CPU actually has integrated graphics, okay? So when I say has integrated graphics, that means I can take this CPU, install it in one of these motherboards, plug in my connector for video, whether it be, I think that's HDMI, dual DVI, VGA. I don't think we have a DisplayPort in one of these, but I could be wrong. So you'll be able to plug that CPU in, plug in your cable to your monitor, and actually get video, right? So that is one of the nice things about those type of CPUs. Now, if you're going to buy a gaming computer, that's not going to cut it. If you're going to build a CAD computer, which either one of these could do CAD, it's not going to cut it. All right, so you will end up having to buy some kind of graphics card, okay, to do those things. Now, so let's throw this to the side. There are, there's i3 9100, i5 9400, i5 9600, i7 9700, and an i9 9900. Okay, so that's what that one means. Now, if you've got an F on the end, this means it doesn't have integrated graphics. You will need a graphics card. Okay, so that is something that you need to be aware of. Now, you can get this CPU super cheap, and it is pretty powerful, honestly, for an i3. But you need to know you need a graphics card, okay? Now, let's put these aside. All three of these have a K at the end of them, okay? So this is 8th gen, and I know that because it says 8700K. These are 9th gen, 9350KF, 9900KF, okay? So let's start with this one. This one just has a K at the end. That means this is overclockable, okay? In fact, this is 8th gen. This will work with a Z370 style motherboard, which, if I remember correctly, this is a Z370 right here in front of us. And you would be able to overclock that, all right? You can also overclock on Z390s, all right? So that's something that you want to match up your motherboard with the type of CPU that you want to get. Now, if it has a KF, let's go back to this. So the fact this has just a K in it, I could also run this without a graphics card installed, okay? Now, is it going to be good for gaming? No, it's going to suck. Moving over, KF, all right? So this combines what we already talked about. It's overclockable, but you need a graphics card, all right? And the same thing here with the 99. So that's just a little bit about CPUs. Now, getting back to our motherboards, since we're going to talk about CPUs a little bit more, actually. Now, on your CPU, let me get this out of here. I'm not going to actually install it, but there is on here a triangle right there, a golden triangle, and you'll want to line that up on your motherboard with basically this corner right here, okay? So that's where that's going to go when you install it. So that helps you align these, all right? You have to be careful with these things. Now, covering up and protecting all these little guys is this plastic cover, okay? So when you go to install the CPU, you can put the CPU in there. You can actually leave this on here. And when you go to basically rock that back and forth, it will actually pop off, all right? So that is basically keep that on as long as you can and store it in your box, all right? So you've got to be really super careful with these things. They are super sensitive to damage. You can bend pins, and not such a great thing. All right, so other things about CPUs in your motherboard. If you're going to get into overclocking, which, you know, not to say we do it here on the channel, but we have the capability, you're going to end up with some massive CPU cooler, okay? So you don't want to go with something like this i9 and buy a little itty-bitty micro ATX board. You're better off buying something like that and then buying something like that, okay? So you want to have a good cooler with those kind of chips. And I have an i5 9600K around here too, but so pretty much I would say, you know, these two, definitely put them in a ATX, full ATX motherboard. That guy, you could get away with that and put it on a little littler, smaller CPU cooler. All right, so we've got two variations of micro ATX, full ATX. We're going to talk about some of the things in there. We've got some examples for some of the components in front of us that I don't have in front of me. But let's just look at some of the basics, okay? On the lower end, this is an H310M. I think this is a gigabyte. It's got 2 slots for RAM. You spend a little bit more, you can get a B360. I think this is a DS3H model. You get 4 spots for RAM. And you'll notice, you know, I talked about in the power supply video, this is your CPU power supply, okay? So there may be 1 set of 4, 2 sets of 4, okay? And then in the X570, there are actually 3 sets of 4, okay? So later in the video, hopefully I'll remember, we'll look at that. Now, other things you're going to see commonly, PCI Express, okay? This is where this graphics card is going to plug in, okay? So that very bottom of it is where that guy goes, okay? And it's going to basically face in the direction of these inputs. Not inputs, but all these different connectors you've got here, your USBs and your Ethernet connector. So it will always face out. All right, so you've got your little CMOS battery. This is kind of a good thing to know about. If you happen to screw something up in your BIOS, sometimes you can pull that out and it will reset stuff for you, and that is a good thing. Okay. Now, I don't think that any of the 300 series motherboards or even the Ryzen ones we're going to talk about have anything but a 24 pin power connector. This comes from your power supply, folks, and there you go. So we've got a power supply there. There's a power supply. This one basically is going to come in here and connect right in there. Sometimes not the easiest thing in the world to get those, because this guy, detaches a lot. But that is basically how that goes in there, okay? So all of these have that, as you can see. All right. Since I forgot it, one of the other things that you have to do, you put that CPU in, you've got to use thermal paste. Unless you got a brand new Intel fan or some other CPU cooler that came with thermal paste on the bottom. Make sure you buy a good tube of this stuff. All right. Now, there's other sizes of these PCI Express slots, and they do different things. We're not really going to get into any detail with that. We'll save that for the, gosh, this is the motherboard video. We probably should talk about that a little more. So, things that you can plug in these, depending on which one they are. Some of these allow you to have dual graphics cards, and whether it's AMD or NVIDIA, you might have Crossfire or SLI. We're not going to get into that. Other things that can be plugged in. So I've got a Wi-Fi card there. In one of my other computers, I've got the ability to have additional USB 3.0s. Did I just say it? Yeah, USB 3.0s. I think I have 4 of them. You can use these, the bigger slots. So this guy or this one, and put in additional solid state drives. Okay, so those are they can come in handy for that kind of stuff. Now, something else that's on all of the 300 series motherboards are these M.2 connectors. So right here we have a M.2 NVMe solid state, and that guy is basically going to come in at a 45-degree angle. And I don't have the screw here, but it would, maybe I do. No, don't have the screw there. It would screw down there, and basically this is what you want to put your operating system on. Now, if you have 2 of these, all right, one of these computers has 2. So there's an EVO 960 Pro, and underneath here is a spot for another one right there. So you can have 2 of those. Some computers have 3. Okay, we don't have that kind of money, unfortunately, to buy one that has 3. So that is that's pretty common there. Okay, so other things you're going to find on here. This isn't the best example. I wish I had my best motherboard out, but you will find CPU fan connector right here. Okay, sometimes you'll have an optional one. That guy there needs 2 fans. Okay, even though there are connectors to run off of one. Then there are different system fans. Okay, so that's something. If you want to have something like that, you don't necessarily have to have all those system fan connectors, because you can use what's called a MOLED connector right there off of your power supply, and daisy chain all those together. So not a huge deal if you don't have that. All right, so we're just kind of jumping all over the place. Connectors for hard drives and 2.5-inch SATA solid state. These are SATA cables, okay? That would plug in there. And then on the other end, it will connect to the hard drive or the solid state 2.5. All right, so depending on the motherboard, you should have upwards of either, let's see, this guy appears has 4. This one has 6 of them. Okay, 4 here, 2 there. This guy has 2 here and 4 here. So pretty common to have that ability to connect that many hard drives. Now, let's see. So coming from your case, okay, look at the front of your case. This guy is a little different. This is probably more standard. You're going to have USB 3.0 and you're going to have USB 2.0s, okay? Sometimes you have, like in this case, you have a USB Type-C, all right? So let's look at our example here. Now this is a USB 3.0 cable coming from the case. This is your Type-C connector, all right? So this motherboard a little more advanced. That one has a little more bells and whistles. What it doesn't have is the second USB 3.0. In this case, if I remember correctly, actually needs a second one. So I do have a X570 that has that, but X570 is in a different case. Now, on your motherboard, let's try and find that example. Here is your USB 3.0 connector on this motherboard, all right? And each one of these, that guy has it there, and it's there on that one, all right? Now, there are also USB 2.0s. This one has 2 sets here, and the other ones have them as well, at least one. You'll have an HD audio on here, so here is that. And so this HD audio and the USB, they come from the case, all right? And if you have that one, you're not going to have a USB 2.0 connector, okay? Just so you know. All right, so jumping around again. Make sure when you get your motherboard, well, excuse me, you decide what CPU you want, and then you figure out what motherboard you want. Make sure you find a case that'll fit it, okay? This is not going to fit in every type of case. Some cases, micro ATX would look really stupid. So you imagine this computer with a little dinky micro ATX card or motherboard in there, not going to look so good. All right, jumping around again. So a little bit about the memory. 288 pin DDR4. You know, all kinds of different frequencies these things can use. Standard ones you're going to see out there for the most part, 2667, 3000, 3200. I don't have them all memorized. There's quite a few. So some of these you will have to go into your BIOS and get them set up for the higher speed, all right? Some of them pretty much tap out at 2667. So keep that in mind if you buy some of the better RAM, that you may have to mess around with your settings inside. All right. So probably the absolute worst thing to connect on these from the case to the motherboard are the ones that deal with your power button, your hard drive light, and reset switch. So all those guys will actually connect over here, and they are itty bitty little guys. So let me look in here. You can just barely see them there. Like this case has only a couple that actually connect, but they're usually a pain to put in. This guy, they are right here. All right, so make sure you follow the directions and put those in the proper orientation. You will find that if you don't put them in right, that you probably will, computer won't boot up, or it will boot, and who knows what will happen. There's all kinds of things you can screw up there. So that is probably one of the most important places to be cautious of, right? So I think motherboard wise, folks, we ain't talked about this yet. These are the old PS2 style connectors, keyboard, mouse. USB 3.0s. Sometimes these will be different colors. Maybe black for 2.0. Like there's a 2.0 right there. Red usually is one of the newer generations. VGA connector, dual DVI, it should be HDMI, Ethernet, 3.0s, 2.0s, and a bunch of different audio connectors, microphone, headphone, that kind of stuff. So you won't see that on all of them. The cheaper boards will look more like that. And then you may see some other variations of what they have there. All right, so that's going to do it for the Intel. Let's go look at AMD. And I'm not going to tell you about everything that I just went over, just some of the things that are a little different. All right, folks, so here is our X570. Now, what I told you about the CPU of the Intel, it's different doing a Ryzen. So make sure you follow your directions on that. Now, I don't have, whatever reason, we don't have these M2s in, screwed in all the way. I'm kind of working on this computer, swapping out stuff. But you see this one has the dual M.2s. This is an example of one that has Wi-Fi again, but then you can just barely see it. I also have another solid state NVMe right there, okay? So it is quite possible to have at least 3. If you had the other motherboard, you might have up to 4. And there's probably another way to get other SSDs in there for storage purposes or whatever. So you have quite a bit of capability. Now this motherboard, a little different than the other one. That one supports only PCI 3.0. This one is 4.0. So there's some advanced stuff on here that the other one does not have. And all that, of course, adds to the price, folks. But yeah, overall, pretty much this thing is pretty similar. You've got your power supply there. There's different system fan connectors throughout it. Now this one does, and you probably can't see it, but this one for the CPU power, there are actually 3 sets of 4 down there, okay? So 12 pins in all for that. And yeah, these X570s are pretty darn expensive. I have a 450 around here somewhere. A lot of similarities to it though. And some of the connectors on here are a little different. Like I think I was mentioning that this has 2 3.0s. This one has it right here, and then another one right there facing outboard. All right, so pretty much that's one of the biggest differences, right? This one allows extreme overclocking, which there may be some Intel ones that do that as well. I've never bought one. And then this has the 2 USB 3.0. So stuff you'll find in the box. You will find that's the input-output shield. You'll find a disk. You'll find some instructions, and you usually find 2 SATA cables in here. Okay. There you have it, folks. That's going to do it for my basic summary of the motherboards that you're going to use for your 2020 build.